The video today is a little bit harder than most for me to do because it hits close to home. And the reason it does that is because it involves the death of a friend, Richard Fry. He died just a few days ago as I'm filming this. I met Richard probably 30 years ago when I moved to the small town that I live in. And Richard was just one of those rare, nice guys. He was married to a very nice lady at the time of his death, and whose name was Terry. And they were just a really sweet couple. They were about the same age as my wife and I, so we had something in common with them. And in addition to that, Richard was rather interested in real estate, which I also had an interest in. I had just been a real estate appraiser for over a dozen years, and Richard was just starting to get interested in different parts of real estate. Had just a really fine mind, much better than mine certainly, but he was just starting or was about to start investing in properties. He picked up a house here and remodeled it with the help of a son, and then sold that and went on to build several houses and lived in a couple of those houses, very nice houses at that. And then later on he became a real estate broker, and at the time of his passing he was a broker for some of the large wind farms that we have around Texas. And so he was a very successful gentleman, but again, I want to point out that he was just a good guy. He and his wife started visiting the small church that I preached at not too long after we moved here, and that's really where I got to know them. And Richard was a very inquisitive man, very serious, and he wasn't a Christian yet, and he wasn't about to leap into it either. He believed in God, certainly, but he wanted to make sure about what it took to be a Christian. He wanted to make sure about Christ, in fact. And so we started to study with him. And I have to admit, it was one of the longest studies I ever did, because it lasted probably over a period of about a year. We would study for a while and pick up again later on and pick up again later on. And Richard was always interested. And then he would, after the study, he would go home and he would dig into the scriptures that we had looked at. And he'd check the context and make sure that everything we were looking at was just right, that his understanding was correct on it. He started not only reading the Bible, but he started reading other books and comparing it to what he was finding in the scriptures. He didn't want to rely on a man's opinion about what the Bible said. He wanted to find out what the Bible said and be confident in his decision. And so about a year later, when he called me up and told me he was ready to become a Christian, I was thrilled. And I also knew that he truly was ready. He wasn't one of those people that Christ talked about, where when he gave the parable of the soils, and he talked about the seed that was sown into shallow soil, and the plant grew up very quickly, but it withered really quickly as well because it didn't have deep root. Well, Richard had deep root. He made absolutely certain that the decision that he was making was right from the scriptures. And so when he became a Christian, again, he had a great confidence in what he was doing. He was not talked into anything. Rather, he was doing something that he sincerely and fervently believed in. And so when he made his good confession of his belief that Jesus was, in fact, the Lord of his life, the Son of God, and then when he was baptized for the forgiveness of his sins, from that moment on, he just was very serious about his faith. He was serious before that as he was searching, but certainly after he found what he was certain was right, he became very serious. It was just probably a couple months after that he came and expressed an interest in teaching the adult Bible classes at Sunday school on Sunday mornings. And well, he was pretty new Christian, and so we talked about it. The elders did, and we decided we'd give him a chance, and he did not let us down. He poured himself into his studies. When he came to present a Bible class, he was prepared. He talked about things that he knew about. He talked about things that he had researched, and he had some a different direction perhaps than a lot of people do who have grown up hearing about Christ and have grown up in a family that was just kind of saturated with Christianity. He had fresh eyes, and he certainly had a sincere heart. And from that point on, we were delighted always whenever Richard wanted to teach one of the Bible classes, because it was always worthwhile going to. You could count on learning something from those Bible classes, and you could also count on the fact that he was going to present it with an accuracy that was somewhat rare for anybody who presents a Bible class. And so it was with some sadness that we watched he and Terry move out of town a few years later, and yet at the same time they didn't move too far away. They still were around close enough to where they'd come back and visit every once in a while, and every once in a while they would invite us over for dinner or for a birthday party or for something like that. So we kept up with them, and certainly their moving was really good for a small congregation in Canyon that benefited greatly from their starting to worship with them, and they benefited greatly from worshiping with that congregation as well. That's the way it ought to be, I believe. Well, I had an opportunity to visit with his family. Again, as I'm talking today, it was just last night, and his grandkids and children and wife were there, and it was just really interesting to hear some of the stories that they had about him and the impressions that they had about him. He wasn't just didn't just have the appearance of a kind person to those on the outside. To those who knew him best, they were absolutely convinced. They knew he was a kind person. He was a patient person. He was highly intelligent, but he was not pompous at all with that intelligence. As a matter of fact, he passed along his knowledge with a great humility. He was a rare individual, and he died too soon. And yet, at his passing, I believe he leaves behind a legacy for his entire family and for his close friends. And that legacy is a legacy of deep and committed faith from a humble man. And it's something that's worth copying in our own lives. It's something worth patterning ourselves after, because he did his best to pattern himself after the picture of a Christian that is given to us from the Scriptures. And so his family now has this legacy, and his friends, we who are his friends, have this legacy, and the question is, what will we do with it? Will we continue it? Will we too have that desire to find out as much as we can about the Bible? Will we make sure as best we can that everything that we believe about the Bible is true? And if we find out that something that we thought was true isn't from studying the Bible, will we change? Will we be determined to do our best to serve God, understanding that this life can be very brief, but eternity is forever? And when you think about it, this life cannot be the main thing, can it? Even though it's the only thing we know, and so we tend to make it the main thing. But it's eternity that we're created for. For those who, by God's grace, enter into heaven, there's going to be an eternity of service. I think there's going to be an eternity of beauty and wonder every day that we exist from that point on. It will be something that will reveal to us the purpose for our being created in the first place. And I know that all of us who are privileged enough, again, by God's grace and because of Jesus' sacrifice, to actually be with them in heaven for all eternity, well, it'll just, every day will be a new wonder. The question is, will we make it? Will we live up to this type of a legacy that not only Richard, but many righteous men and women have left behind for us to follow? Will we live up to the legacy that God himself has left for us to follow, and that Christ died so that we might have an opportunity to live it? Or will we just go on with life and get involved with all the busy things that we get involved with and get our focus back on the physical things again? Hopefully, especially when we see a situation like this, someone who has taken somewhat out of time, taken somewhat early, but who's lived a good life, hopefully that will give us an encouragement to also pick up where they left off, so that now maybe we can be a little bit kinder to others who are going to need that kindness because it's not available from those who have already passed. And if we don't pick up the responsibility and do something with it in a loving manner, who will? We all have a great legacy to live up to. I believe Richard Fry has left a tremendous legacy behind, big shoes to fill, and his family is going to have to give it their all to be able to fill those shoes. But it's also going to be a pleasure, I think, to do that because they have a good pattern, a good leader who helped start them off. And then, of course, they have the perfect pattern and the perfect leader, our Lord and Savior. How are you doing with the legacy that's been given to you? Are you doing well with it, like Richard appeared to be doing, or could it use a little work? If you're like me, it could use a little work. Let's be determined to put that effort into it. And not because we think that somehow we will earn whatever eternity that God has in store for the righteous, but because we know through humility we don't deserve it, but it's the greatest opportunity of all time, and God has given it to us. Will we take advantage of that? What will we do with our own legacy? What legacy will we leave behind? Will it be something that's honorable? Will it be something that's admirable? Or will it be just something that people quickly forget? Well, that's the lesson for today. It's just some thoughts that I've had since Richard's passing, and I thought maybe they'd be helpful to you if I passed them along while they were fresh on my mind. But I hope this is something that gives you something to think about and will encourage you to renew your effort to live up to the legacy that Christ has left for us all. Well, thank you for listening today. I appreciate it. I hope we'll see you next time.